Everybody loves a good horror game. Everybody. Yes. Even you. But what happens when you reverse the roles? What happens when you are the monster? It's been done to a degree, of course, mostly with PvP games such as Dead by Daylight, Friday the 13th, Evolve, games like that. But what happens when it's a single player game? What kind of an atmosphere is given, and how well does it work? So, in case you were still unsure by this point, today I shall be reviewing Carrion, a horror game developed by Phobia Game Studios and published by Devolver Digital. It is described as a reverse horror game due to the fact that you get to play as the monster and do all the fun things monsters get to do. It was released in July 2020 for PC, Nintendo Switch and Xbox One. Sorry Sony fans, but as it stands, this one ain't for you, although it's been said that one day it might be. Before we continue, let me throw up this little spoiler warning for you now. It's one of these games that it's all about the gameplay, so although there is not much of a story to talk about, there is a lot of gameplay points that I will be talking about, so if you want nothing spoiled, I suggest you go and play the game first. Now, without further ado, let's review Carrion. The story to Carrion is short and sweet. It centers around the monster you play as, the organism. It breaks out of its containment unit and has to find its way out of the research facility it's held in. Along the way, it must find different pieces of itself that have been taken for research, allowing it to grow and evolve. The organism must slither, squelch, and eat its way out of the research center. Along the way, it learns about its past and how it ended up in this facility. That's it. That's all there is to it, which is fine. Yes, there could be more to it, but it's a short game that puts all its effort into its gameplay. The gameplay is where the devs really wanted to make this game shine. You control the monster, and you must make your way through the facility to make your escape, solving puzzles and killing those in your way. Now, it's not a game which has tons and tons of mechanics to it, but because of how the mechanics work, let's take this one step at a time. So, I played this game on the PC, but I actually found playing with the controller a lot easier. Let's start with the movement. If you play with keyboard and mouse, the way you move is you hold the left click and then the monster will move where the cursor is. The further away you hold the cursor from the monster, the faster the movement. I actually found this awkward to control this way, and so decided to use a controller, at which point it's just used the left analog stick to move him along. The biggest problem I found is that when you become big, and you do get pretty big, it struggles to understand where you want to move, and I think this is because it tries to make it so the whole monster is active. This way there is no back or front. This is fine with combat, but when it came to trying to move through certain bits quickly, and you can't turn a corner, it became a bit frustrating. Next is combat, for lack of a better word. With mouse and keyboard you aim the cursor and use the right click to attack with your tentacle. On the controller it's the right analog stick to aim and right trigger to attack. With both ways though, all this does is grab the enemy. You then need to shake them around or bring them back to yourself to kill and eat them. This worked well for the most part, although I would have preferred it that if I wanted to eat the enemy, just letting go of the analog stick would have been enough to bring them back. But I actually had to faff around aiming the catch towards me, just prolonging things in an awkward way. As you progress through the game, you can find parts of yourself to grow and gain extra abilities. These are used to get through puzzles and for extra combat. Now the way it works is each level of your growth gets its own particular abilities, which I thought was an interesting way of doing things. This way you sometimes had to use these little pools to drop off some of your gunk, meaning you had less health and weaker abilities to get through the next section. Some of these abilities are things like invisibility, a sudden punch to destroy wood or knock enemies over, all the way to control the enemies for a more stealthy attack, or just straight up sending spiked tendrils through everyone and anyone in your path, and then pulling everything apart. These upgrades worked really well, and really did make you think about what you needed to do to progress, but also make you feel like an absolute monster at times. There are a variety of enemies ranging from those that are just there for health fodder, all the way to drones who you need to grab and smack around to destroy. I thought the variety was really good, and as I got further into the game, really made me stop and think a bit more about how I need to deal with certain rooms. For the type of game it is, it has quite a large map, and as you get further upgrades, you do actually need to backtrack. For the most part, the game actually still put you in a fairly linear path. Even when going back, it would quite often chuck you where you needed to go. The problem was, sometimes it was easy to get lost and get yourself wandering in a circle, and unfortunately, you do not have a map to accommodate you along your way. As I said, not a huge deal, but would have just been nice to have. There are optional extras to get as well. Simple upgrades like less damage from fire or more energy to turn invisible. Little things like that. Me personally, I didn't get these. So overall, I would say the gameplay was good. Truly made me feel powerful. Sometimes though, I did find the controls were fighting against me, causing some really unneeded deaths, and with them, unneeded frustration. The soundtrack was done by Chris Velasco. It's not too bad. In all honesty, it isn't anything that struck out to me, but I do remember when playing the game, it set the mood perfectly. Everything is dark and foreboding. Unfortunately though, nothing ever stood out much from one track to the other, and almost all blended into one. Yes, it set the mood perfectly, but it did not go above and beyond to set different tones much depending on the situation, unfortunately. The sound effects though, are great. These were brilliant. From the screams of people running from you, to the crying as they realise they can't escape you, to the crunching of bones as you eat and the smashing of metal as you swing drones around, the slithering sounds and flickering tendrils as you move through the facility are fantastic. And the screams and growls that come from the monster as it's hurt, they really went all out when it came to the sound effects, and it really stands out. The graphics are decent. It's done in a 16-bit style, like games of old, but everything still looks so fluid. The way the tendrils slither around, all the way to the fluidity of the human's movement really stands out and looks fantastic. It's a good looking game, and I think the devs made a good choice doing it in this retro style. It really adds this charm to it. This game was great fun. I thoroughly enjoyed myself while playing this one. It's not a long game. I finished it in about 4 hours altogether. I believe the devs did a good job making you feel like a monster on a rampage trying to escape captivity, and it definitely earns its description of reverse horror. I think the control scheme should be tightened up a bit with the movement and eating, and a map would really help a lot. But overall, it's a really good game. It's one that I could definitely see myself coming back to at some point as well, because it was just so much fun tearing my way through this facility, being the monster you're always running from. It's one of those games that I would actually love to see a sequel to. A way for the minimal story to be expanded upon, and a way for the mechanics to be tightened. I would love to know where this monster came from, like truly came from, not just where it was found. Well, that's all we have time for today everyone, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't already, then please hit that subscribe button, ring the bell and drop a like. Did you play Carrion? Did you enjoy the flip of being able to play as the monster? Or did you find the mechanics a bit too awkward? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. You can find me on Twitter at DrumForestDrum. If you have any suggestions on games you want me to review, hit me up there. And I shall catch you next time. Take it easy everybody.